Hi and welcome to This Week in Travel. I'm Michelle Robson, editor of Turning Left for Less. As you can see, I'm not at home. I'm sitting at the newest Hilton in Dubai, the Hilton Palm Jumeirah. I'll be talking about that later in the programme. We'll also have the latest travel news and some interesting information about a destination you may not have been to called Ras Al Khaimah, which is one of the Emirates near Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. This week's travel news had an interesting development from British Airways, who have announced that they are going to allow you to part pay with Avios for British Airways holidays. Currently, you can only do that for flights. Whilst it may seem like a good idea, if you actually look at the maths, it's not particularly great redemption. I know a lot of people use their Avios for part pay for flights because they get frustrated, they can't find the flights that they want as a full reward. But it's generally not a particularly good redemption unless they happen to have a special offer on. If we look at an example, I was looking at a holiday that was around £600 per person, but when you look at trying to save £500 off the total price of the holiday, which was the most you could, it was around 1,100,000 Avios. Whereas you think for that price, you could actually get a Club World flight return. Yes, you'd have to pay the tax and charges that maybe are around £700. But if you think about your average sort of American fare in the sale, if you're really lucky, you might get it for £1,700 per person in Club World. And then if you compare that to using the Avios, which would be maybe £700 in taxes and fees, that takes it down to £1,000. So for the same amount as you save £500 off of a holiday, you're actually saving around £1,000 on the cheapest possible fare for Club World. So that kind of just gives you a little illustration. It's only just kind of one-off illustration. Once you get to the lower levels, where you're just talking about small amounts of Avios, it's slightly better value, but really is it worth it just to save, £50? Personally, I don't think so, but if you've got a lot of Avios and you want to try and use them up, then it's a good way to get rid of some, if not particularly great value. You can either use it to pay for the balance, or you can actually use it just to pay for the deposit as well. So it's pretty much the same as you're used to with part pay for Avios with flights, just for holidays. Virgin Atlantic also announced something interesting. It's funny, I was talking to the guys from Virgin Atlantic not that long ago about things like Seat Spy and Reward Flight Finder, because I find it interesting that airlines haven't tried to do something themselves, because both of these companies offer really good service. I use them both a lot to try and find rewards and set alerts, but yet the airlines don't offer that. So someone's kind of profiting from offering a service that the airlines don't. So Virgin have announced that they're actually giving a better way to find their reward flights. So that's worth checking out. I'll put the link to the article that explains it all in the link below. Also this week, we had a very rare apology from the Amsterdam CEO that's changed recently. Amsterdam for me has just been an example of an absolute nightmare where they've just got it wrong so many times. There were massive queues last year over the summer. There were tents outside with people waiting 3 hours to get into the airport, which is just absolutely crazy. And then they seem to kind of get it in hand by offering extra money for people to work in security and airport positions over the summer. But then they stopped it, and funnily enough, people started to leave again. They were back at square one. So the problem started up again. When I went through in, I think it was September, it was actually not too bad. The wait to immigration was horrendous. That was like, you couldn't even enter immigration when I got there. We were queuing to queue for immigration, which is pretty crazy. But actually when I went through security, it was premium security. I was in business class, absolutely fine, no wait at all. But there have been numerous issues, and they've had a cap on the passenger numbers, which is partly down to the Dutch government wanting to limit the amount of flights due to environmental concerns, but also so that the airport can cope. So the CEO gave a very heartfelt apology, I thought. Normally you get these kind of half apologies that really don't admit anything, but he actually said, they pretty much never had a worse year and they gave such poor service to everybody. So I think that's a really good starting point. You have to admit your mistakes before you can sort them out. However, they are going to have to continue the cap, it looks like, potentially as far as the autumn, which is a bit of a shame, but at least it means that you're actually going to probably not have too bad an experience. But it does mean that the airlines like KLM will be restricted in what services they can restore that they perhaps had pre-COVID, or putting more frequencies on the routes they already have. And finally, some good news for those that hate the 100ml liquids rule, a bit like myself. I remember the days where I used to clank on the plane on the way back from somewhere with a great wine region with my little bag full of 6 bottles of wine, which used to be a great way to transport it back without having to worry about it in your suitcase and how much it weighed. So Luton Airport have announced that they think they will have the new scanners by the end of the year, and you will be able to take up to 2 litres through security screening and also not need to take your laptop out. I mean, that to me is great progress. Heathrow seem to have been trialling a similar thing with their new CT scanners, that they actually have them, but they still haven't actually really rolled it out, which to me just seems crazy, because I actually remember the press release pre-COVID, and still we're 3 years on and still it's not actually been implemented properly. So hopefully they'll get their act together and eventually we'll see it at Heathrow as well. The government have given a limit of 2024 for airports in the UK to implement the new screening, which means that hopefully all the liquids rules will change in 2024. However, I think in the meantime, it's actually going to be quite confusing, because if you're someone who's maybe not the most sophisticated traveller, you go through Luton and liquids are fine, you turn up with your 2 litres, it's great, and then you go to Heathrow or Gatwick and they say, no, you can't take it. So I'm actually not sure that it's necessarily the best idea to have different airports in the same country having different security rules. I mean, for most people it's hard enough to know what they are anyway, let alone changing them according to the airport. So if you've never heard of Ras Al Khaimah, then it's a emirate that's north of Dubai by around an hour. It's not dry. I know a lot of people were asking questions about that, but it's very, very different to Dubai. So if you've kind of been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi and maybe found Dubai a bit over the top, preferred Abu Dhabi, but thought maybe it's still a little bit busy and built up, then Ras Al Khaimah is the perfect place for you. I've kind of fallen in love with it. It's my first visit and I've seen lots of the sites, I've tried a few of the hotels, and I'm definitely coming back probably this winter. It's the ideal place for some relaxation and some winter sun. So let's take a view of the basics of getting here and getting around. So you can fly into Dubai and then it's about an hour to get here. Taxis are quite happy to take you here. It costs around about 200 dirham, which is around about £50 or a little bit less. You can also use an app called Careem. Uber doesn't work in Ras Al Khaimah. There's no Ubers here. You can get an Uber from the airport, but you'll struggle to get one here. So I recommend Careem, which is spelled with a C, and it does lots of different things, including intercity rides. So going from here to back to Dubai, for example, or if you just want a taxi locally, it's quite useful. But it is a lot more expensive than a normal taxi, even though you actually get in a normal taxi. So if you can just find one at the hotel or at the mall, then you're probably better off just using a local taxi. As per Dubai, they generally don't take cards, but if you use the Careem app, you can pay by card, exactly like Uber. So other than getting around, what is there to do here? Well, there's actually quite a lot. That's what I like about it. It's known as the nature emirate, and there's a lot to do in that sort of respect, rather than kind of the water parks and malls and things like that. It's quite different and good if you're adventurous and you like things like hiking. So one of the main attractions is Jebel Jais, which is the mountains here. And personally, I think even just driving through there is worth it, because the drive up to the top is really quite spectacular. It's almost like something from another planet. And I'm sure they'll probably film a few films there that are set on different planets, because it's just such a stunning landscape. Once you get to the top, there's quite a few attractions up there. There's the world's longest zip line, which is done Superman style. And then there's a series of 8 zip lines that takes quite a while, that's done in a sitting position. If that sounds a bit adventurous, there's also the sledder, which is about an 8-minute ride downhill. You start off kind of sitting down. You can have 2 people in a car, you and a child, for example, or 2 adults. And it takes you up first to the top of the mountain, and then you kind of sled down, but it's more like a little car, I would say, or a cart, and it does have brakes and steering, so you do have some control of it, but it's on rails, so it's almost a bit like a roller coaster, I'd say, but with a bit more personal control. If you don't fancy any of that, it sounds a bit adventurous, you can also go to the lovely restaurant there, Puro, which has amazing views and really nice food, and it's quite upmarket, so it's worth just maybe having a drive out there and going up the mountain just to have lunch, for example, and enjoy the views, or even breakfast if you fancy going early morning. I would advise taking something warm with you because it is a little bit cooler. So that's also something probably worth touching on at this point is Ras Al Khaimah, because it's north, it tends to be a little bit cooler than Dubai, which is good, I think, because it kind of extends the season. Normally the season would be, I'd say, probably October to maybe April, and then it starts getting really hot, and certainly July and August generally I'd avoid because it's in the sort of mid 40s and very humid, which you maybe wouldn't expect in the desert, whereas here it tends to be a few degrees cooler, and obviously you can escape into the mountains, which is much cooler up there. So definitely worth considering if you're thinking about shoulder season. In terms of other attractions, I also did the Pearl Farm excursion, which I really enjoyed this. It starts off in their, funnily enough, the shop, which is in Ras Al Khaimah. And then once you've started there, you go on one of the old-fashioned fishing boats or pearl boats out to the Pearl Farm, which is floating, and it's actually a really nice boat ride out there. I really enjoyed like looking at the scenery. You go past an island that has camels roaming around, and you go past mangroves, and there's even flamingos in the distance, and all that time you've got those beautiful mountains in the background, so it's really quite a stunning little cruise out there. Once you're there, they take you through the whole history of pearl farming, which I found really interesting, and they actually have some oysters there, and you can try and open one and see if there's a pearl inside, which was quite fun. So I enjoyed that, and then we had a really nice lunch upstairs on the top deck that's all shaded and all very traditional Arabic style. Really enjoyed that, and some good food as well, and then you go back to the mainland, so that's definitely worth it. It takes around about 3 or 4 hours. Definitely worth doing that, and then you can buy some pearls if you want to. They have some really nice jewellery there actually, and they're obviously pearl farmed, but they talk about how they used to do it when it was actually diving for pearls in the old days, as well as how they farm them now. Other attractions include the mall here. It's nothing like the Dubai malls. You know, those are absolutely huge. I quite like it actually because it's still a fair size. It's the there's 4 malls, but the one that I like is the Al Hamra Mall, which is very close to the Waldorf Astoria here. You can actually walk. It doesn't have, you know, the biggest selection of shops, but if you've forgotten something or you just want a little browse, it has, you know, Boots, has Sephora if you like that. It has quite a lot of the usual clothes shops, so it's ideal for a quick browse. It has quite a few restaurants there as well, and a cinema, so if you just wanted to pop out for a bit, or maybe had a day where the weather wasn't so good, then that's handy to pop in there. If you wanted to do something in the evening, I really recommend the Sonara Desert Experience. It's set at the It's set at the Ritz-Carlton. It's not actually part of the Ritz-Carlton, but you drive through the Ritz-Carlton grounds to get there. It's really quite spectacular. It's in the desert. It's really beautifully done. It's much more at market. If you've done one of those Dubai type desert experiences, they're a bit kind of mass market tourist. This is very much kind of the fine dining version of that. So you start sitting above the actual dining area, which is down sort of in a dip in the desert, and you've got the beautiful mountains in the background. They actually light some of that at night, and you can do things like I flew an owl, which I really enjoyed, and you can even stroke it. It was very soft, which I didn't expect. It was so gorgeous, the owl, and they have various other birds of prey there as well. They have a camel, so all the kind of traditional things. You can do the sand dune sandboard as well, but you start off with drinks and canapes, which is really nice, and they were very generous canapes, so definitely take your appetite with you because there's a lot of food. It's really good value for money, I think. Then once you've sat there and you've watched the beautiful sunset over the sand dunes and the mountains, then you walk down into this sort of dip where they've set up this lovely dining area. It would be a really romantic experience if you wanted to do it with a partner or a spouse. It would be great for something a bit special, and you have your dinner, and it's a selection of local food, but as I said, more of a fine dining experience. The food was really good. There's 3 courses where the first 2 courses was a big selection of different bowls of different types of local foods, and then the main course had 2 different types of meat and various vegetables and rice. It was really good food. Soft drinks are included. You just pay extra if you want alcohol, but they had a good selection of wine if you fancied some wine with it, and then you got just a set selection of sort of mini desserts, which was also really good. So I was impressed with the food. We also had entertainment, which was somebody doing a balancing act, and then there was a really spectacular fire show as well, which I really enjoyed that. It was pretty much like something from Britain's Got Talent. So it was done in a tasteful way. It was quite small. They only generally have around sort of 20, 25 people. So it's really nicely done, and that was a really special experience that I'll remember for a long time. There's even more to see than that. There's a little marina where it's quite nice to go for a drink or some lunch, or just a little wander around. There's also 2 forts. One is up 200 steps, which maybe you don't fancy doing that in the heat. And there's also a fort that's a village where they have the Fine Arts Festival at this time of year. And it has traditional houses, how people would have lived, and a little sort of souk full of food generally. So that's nice for a wander around and something to learn a bit of the history. There's also a couple of mosques. There's one of the oldest mosques here that you can go and see, and visitors are welcome, and you can do that as a tour with the Ras Al Khaimah museum, which has a lot of artifacts in from how people used to live years ago, so that can be an interesting trip. So you're definitely not going to be short of things to do, that's for sure. So shall we talk a bit about the hotels then? As you can see, I'm, for those that are watching on YouTube, I'm at the Waldorf Astoria in Ras Al Khaimah, which is probably the most luxurious hotel here. It's one of the original hotels that's built in quite a traditional Arabic style, which I like, but inside is very modern. It's one of those hotels where you kind of walk in and you just feel that sense of calm the minute you walk in. It's very luxurious, but it's not intimidating, which some hotels can be a little bit over the top. The service is very personal. The rooms are really generous size, even like the fairly basic rooms. You get a lovely balcony overlooking the beach, a walk-in dressing room in every room. I mean, what's not to like there? Separate shower with a bench seat, and also a bath in every room as well. So I'm really impressed with the standard of rooms here. There's also a main swimming pool, which is suitable for children, and there's most importantly for me, an adults only pool called the Sunset Pool. And I really like this. It's an infinity pool overlooking the beach. Great service. It's all done by an app, which I like, online. Well, it's done online rather than an app, where you can order to your chair. The water is beautifully warm. It's very peaceful here because it's such a large place. You just don't really feel like there's many people here, which is great. It's just very relaxing. And I've been to the spa this morning, had a lovely foot massage. They have lots of different treatments there. They also have a special couples room that has its own jacuzzi and steam room, which is something really special. So a visit to the spa is also worthwhile. I've eaten here in both of the main restaurants. They have a great Japanese one that's very modern, and has one of the largest collections of sake in the UAE. It's a bit like a sort of Nobu vibe, so very modern Japanese cuisine. That was excellent. And then I really recommend the Lexington Grill. That might sound like a traditional steakhouse, but it's much more than that. There's a lot of very modern fine dining cuisine to choose from, as well as your traditional dry-aged steak. So you could easily eat there sort of 2 or 3 times and not be bored. So there's definitely enough to do for a few nights, and then if you wanted to go out, you're very close to lots of the other hotels that have restaurants. So this would be probably my top pick if you want something really luxurious. Most of the hotels in Ras Al Khaimah are generally much cheaper than Dubai, so that's one of the reasons for coming here, not just necessarily the fact it's a bit quieter. So I also stayed at the Movenpick. Now, if you're familiar with Movenpick in the UK, you probably think more of like a city hotel that's maybe sort of 3-4 star, but here it's actually a 5-star resort. I really enjoyed the adults only area. It's only adults only at the weekend, but generally you never saw any children there during the week. And that was around the Ula restaurant, which is Mediterranean. And there it has an infinity pool, and a really almost like a Santorini sort of vibe, very Mediterranean, really beautifully done, and very relaxing. I had one of the chalets, as they call them, which is really a beach villa that has its own private pool. And that was almost like a bath. It was so warm. You walked out from there straight onto the beach, which I really loved. That in the morning I would kind of just go and have a quick walk along the beach whilst it was quiet. And the way they've done the landscaping is almost a bit like the Maldives. It's very lush plantation, and it just gives it something a little bit special. So I would definitely recommend the Movenpick, particularly if you have children. They really cater for children very well there. They have a very large main pool that's very good for children. They have a beach there with beautiful white sand. It's nice and shallow to start off with, so it's easy if you've got children, you want to take them in the water. And there's quite a few different restaurants there. As well as Ula, there's also a French bistro, there's the beach house, and then there's the main sort of buffet restaurant. So even if you're not staying there, I'd recommend going to Ula for dinner because I really enjoyed the food there. One of the newest hotels here is the Intercontinental. I didn't stay there, but I did go and have a look round. Now there they have a club lounge, which I know a lot of readers like, especially here where alcohol is quite expensive. It's worth pointing out that here has not done the 30% tax cut on alcohol that they have done in Dubai. So at the moment they are considering doing it. Hopefully they will, but alcohol probably will be a little bit more expensive than in Dubai. So it could be worth considering something like the Club Intercontinental. Now that's actually a separate building with club rooms, the club lounge, which does the usual breakfast, afternoon tea, canapes and drinks. And also it has a separate pool. I really liked the Intercontinental. It was definitely busier than the Waldorf, but it was again a large area. There were lots of restaurants there, so if you wanted to maybe go somewhere different and you were staying in the Waldorf, the Intercontinental is only like 10 minutes away, and there's lots of different restaurants to choose from there. So that's a brief overview. There's quite a few other hotels if you wanted something maybe a little bit cheaper. There's a Hampton that's actually 5-star by Hilton, which you wouldn't normally expect. I believe it was meant to be a Conrad originally, so that's kind of why it's so nice for a Hampton, which can sometimes be a little bit more basic. So that's worth considering if you wanted something a bit cheaper. And there's all the major brands here. There's 2 Ritz-Carltons, one on the coast, one in the desert, which you maybe want to do a 2-center and stay in the Ritz-Carlton in the desert and one of the beach hotels. And most of the hotels are either on Marjan Island, which is where the Movenpick are. Most of them are sort of gathered around there, or further along the coast where the Waldorf is. But they're all within about 10 to 15 minutes of each other. So it's easy to go out and about and have dinner at one of them or go to one of the bars. Taxis are super cheap. If you pay cash, it's about £1.50 from here to the mall. So it's, I'd say, probably a little bit cheaper than Dubai, and they're generally quite reasonable there. So that's my overview of Ras Al Khaimah. I've really enjoyed it. I would definitely be coming back this winter, I think, to have a relaxing break. It just feels that it's a little bit calmer. It feels very traditional. Do you know, when you go to Dubai, it's all a bit kind of like Disneyland. It's not quite real, and it's, you know, a bustling city with a beach, really. Whereas here, it's pretty much a beach and a desert, and a more traditional way of living here, which I really enjoy. And I think now's the time to come because you know, they are gradually developing it, but they don't want to be like Dubai. There's not going to be high rises, but they're just about to open the Anantara, which is going to have water villas, which I'm quite excited about. So I might pop in there when I come back, but I definitely recommend coming here if you fancy something that's easy to get to, better value than Dubai and much less built up. I definitely recommend a visit here. I'm here at the newest Hilton in Dubai, which is the Hilton Palm Jumeirah, and as per its name, it's on the palm, but it's only on what you would call the trunk of the palm. So I know a lot of people maybe think about staying on the palm and feel it might be a bit out of the way, but because this is relatively low down on the palm, it actually is only a couple of minutes back onto the mainland. So I definitely wouldn't let that put you off. It's on the Jumeirah beach side of the palm, so the views are towards the marina area. And you can see the rest of the palm from here, but there is a little bit of built up sort of building works that you can probably just about see in the distance behind me. So at the moment it's good at night because it's all lit up and there's a lovely skyline view, but during the day you can actually see the building site, but you can't hear anything, so it's not actually going to affect your stay. Just it kind of blocks the Dubai wheel behind me. Other than that, it's very new. It's only just opened in September 2022, and when you walk in, it doesn't really feel like your standard Hilton. It feels very glitzy and glamorous as per Dubai and what you might expect. It's a huge lobby, one of the biggest ones I've been in. It's all white and some stunning chandeliers and floral displays, so you come in and it instantly feels like a luxury hotel. I'm staying in one of the executive rooms, which you might get upgraded to if you're a Hilton Diamond like me, because that's generally what they'll try and upgrade you to. If not, it may well be worth paying for that because it does entitle you to the Executive Club Lounge, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first, let's talk about the room. So I'm pretty impressed with the room, I have to say. It's definitely, again, not like your bog standard Hilton. It's got a really lovely bathroom. It's in black marble, it's large, it's got a massive walk-in shower and a separate deep soaking tub, which I had a lovely bath in earlier. It has the large size toiletries, so they are kind of fixed to the wall, but they're the usual Crabtree and Evelyn ones, which I don't mind. Plenty of amenities in the bathroom, all your usual little extras like your vanity kit, etc. So yeah, the bathroom is kind of a highlight for me. It does feel very luxurious. In my room I've got two what they call queen size beds, which I say are slightly smaller than a double. But you can also get a king size room as well. I just chose this because I arrived a bit early and my room wasn't ready, so I thought I'd rather just have this since I'm just here for the night. It also has a balcony, which is nice. Overlooks the pool, which is and the beach, which is a good view during the day and at night because it's all lit up. So I would definitely try and go for a balcony unless you're here in the height of the summer. Other things to say is there's a big choice of restaurants here. So I've just been to Trader Vic's this evening, which I really enjoyed, but you kind of know what you're getting with Trader Vic's. There's also a sort of kind of American bar slash restaurant that does kind of your raw bar, as they call it in America, with seafood, but also quite a lot of American classics. And they even have a bucking bronco in there if you fancy that. And that's kind of more family friendly. There's also actually a rooftop bar, which is done by Buddha Bar, and that was very stylish. I went up there and I would definitely recommend a visit to there, even if you're not staying here. It looked lovely and a beautiful roof terrace. So yeah, try that out even if you're not actually going to stay here. You're also in an area where there's plenty of things. The Marriott is due to open. In fact, I think it's just opened next door. So that's something you could easily walk to if you wanted, because it's literally bang next door, which kind of, you know, heightens your amount of restaurants. If you just wanted to chill out and not have to worry about taxis, you could actually walk to a few things. Other than that, there's a spa here. There's a big gym. Pool-wise, there's only really one main pool. It's for adults and children, so if you're someone that wants an adults only pool, you're not going to find it here. There's also a special kids pool that's covered, but you do tend to get quite a few children in the pool. It's a massive pool. It doesn't feel crowded even when there's a lot of people there, and there's a lovely swim up bar which is also shaded, which is great. There were not that many lounges when I went down. It was maybe, I don't know, about 60-70% full, and that was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Obviously it's not quite peak season now with half term being over, but the beach area is huge and there's loads of lounges, so you're never going to be fighting to get a lounger. You might just have to sit on the beach rather than the pool. It's kind of like a long thin pool, so there's only a limited amount of lounges around it. You didn't get any water or anything at the pool, which I thought was a bit of a mistake, but you do have the QR code, which means that you can just scan it and order to your lounger, which I liked, and that was really quick. I ordered some food, it maybe only took 10 minutes, which I thought was pretty good. The water is a nice temperature in the pool. It's about 29 degrees, so some of them are a bit like a bath, but that was just that little bit cooler, which is quite refreshing because it's 33 degrees here in Dubai today. Other things to mention are the fact that the Executive Club Lounge I thought was very good. It's got an outdoor terrace. It's quite small, the outdoor terrace, but probably enough room if you get there early for the evening drinks. You can sit and watch the sunset, which was beautiful tonight. They have 3 different presentations. They have the breakfast in the morning, and that is not a big buffet. I believe most of it's a la carte, but I'll check that out tomorrow and I'll put that in the review. Then they have afternoon tea, and then in the evening I went up today for the canapes and drinks. There was a reasonable selection of canapes. I wouldn't say it was one of those ones you could really kind of ditch your dinner and have that. It was there was soup, there was salad, there was some little tiny sort of finger sandwiches, and a few other bits and bobs, but it was very nice. A couple of little hot items, very nice, but more of a kind of canapes rather than a full dinner like some places. The drinks, there were 4 wines to choose from, 2 white, 2 red. Wasn't bad what I had, perfectly drinkable, you know, not fine wine, but then it never is in these places. And there was a good selection of branded spirits, things like Bombay Sapphire for your gin and Absolute Vodka, so decent selection of branded spirits there as well. So overall it was a really nice space. It wasn't too crowded when I went up. There was plenty of room. You could have a proper dining table, or you could have a nice comfortable sofa or armchair. So yeah, definitely worth considering having the lounge given the price of alcohol in Dubai. Obviously we are about to hopefully see some changes with the 30% cut in duty that's due to happen shortly. So that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed a look at Ras Al Khaimah and the new Hilton in Dubai. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you've got any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. Next week I'm going to be looking at Oman, that I'm going to be travelling to next, and looking at the Jumeirah Hotel there, which is very new, and also the more established Shangri-La. Until then, happy travels.